Well, just recorded here with Neil Juneja, who's a attorney in a lot of different industries, but he became big and famous in the weed industry. And he's just a super smart, interesting guy, a lot of fun to talk with. You'll see that we kind of started down this path and then just kind of went whoops, 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 whoops. And we talked about 100 different things. So it was a fun conversation. I hope you enjoy it. It was a blast to do. And enjoy. Hello, and thanks for joining today on Geese of Gear, episode number 277. Today's podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Support. They are excited to announce they're now shipping the new VMC-T-T Venue Series mic stand. This new standard height telescoping boom stand brings Ultimate Support's dependability and style to the mic stand format. Countless venues and crews depend on them to be road ready, and this will happily fit into existing touring mic cases alongside existing stands. Venue Series mic stands from Ultimate Support give you everything you expect from a touring mic stand alongside better materials, better quality, and a better price. Check out the Venue Series today at ultimatesupport.com to learn more. And today's podcast is also brought to you by our friends at GearSource. Founded in 2002 with an ambitious mission to support live events businesses buy and sell gear globally. Since that time, the company has transacted in more than 100 countries, selling $250 million with a B in sound lighting, staging, and video gear. GearSource continues to evolve the platform for massive global growth, enabling localized currencies, payments held in escrow to protect buyers and sellers, AI-powered logistics behind a new global logistics brand, and so much more. The company has recently released massive new features, including GearSync with the ability to manage up to 400 listings at once, and NeedZone, an automated shopping assistant for hard-to-find items. Take full control over your gear with a visit to gearsource.com. And last but not least, I wanted to do a quick shout out to our friends at Coffee Cult. I am just getting another shipment in of coffee today. I ran out last night, actually. And, or I think I ran out this morning, but I'm out. Put it that way. So I'm shaky, not from coffee, but I'm shaky because I need coffee. If you haven't tried Coffee Cult yet, why not? It's the best. The Geezer's Grind blend that they created for us is amazing. It's a combination of their Road Dog and medium blend, and it's just fantastic. And better yet, all of the profits, all of the proceeds from any sale of Geezer's Grind coffee beans goes to Roby Backstage, a charity that takes care of our industry. So try it because it's great coffee. I promise you it is. But you'll also be benefiting our industry with a very gracious charitable donation from Coffee Cult. So visit Coffee Cult with K's, coffee with a K, cult with a K.com. And if you order 2 bags, I believe the shipping is free, and support a great family-owned local business, but also support our industry. Thanks. So here we are. The election is over. It actually was over last week, but I didn't want to talk about it because I had Bob Boniol on, and I know that he's certainly a little bit intense when it comes to this election cycle. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad that the world will return to whatever this new version of normal is going to be, and we can all be friends again. Because at the end of the day, that's the part that bothers me the most, believe it or not, is that our industry sort of picks sides, and you're not allowed to hang out with the other side, which is crazy. I like everyone, unless you're just a lousy person. And so for me, I don't care who you vote for, who you sleep with, who you pray to, who you whatever. None of that matters to me. It's really just, are you a good person or a bad person? And fortunately, most of the people I know in this industry are good people. So I'm glad to be able to be on the same side again, at least if we can forget about politics, because I've forgotten about it for sure. I'm so uninterested in watching, listening, getting phone calls from or text messages from any political side, regardless of which side you're on. So that is gone. And speaking of Bob Boniel, what a great chat. I always forget how friggin' smart that guy is. I mean, it is unbelievable, his level of knowledge of just technology in general, but specifically AI, which, of course, is one of my favorite topics lately. So check out that episode. I think it's 276, if I remember correctly. And I believe as I'm recording this, it just got launched this morning. So really, really excellent chat. Most of it way above my head, but a lot of it I actually understood and was able to comment on a little bit as well. So check out Bob Boniel, 276. And speaking of AI, so this morning on my morning walk, and much longer, I haven't finished it, but I've been listening to Lex Friedman talk with Dario Amodi, I think his last name is, from Claude and Anthropic. He's the CEO of Anthropic, which operates Claude and multiple other models as well. But Anthropic is one of the big, like OpenAI, like XAI. It's one of the big AI firms that is doing really big things, and their model is moving very rapidly ahead. So a couple of the things that he's talked about, and I recommend if you have interest in AI or if you want to learn more, I mean, these guys talk at a pretty high level, so they're tough to follow for anyone. But especially if you're really new to AI, it might not be the first podcast I'd send you to, but it's a good one. So Lex Friedman, again, with Dario Amodi. I don't know what episode number that is, but I'm sure if you search for Dario on Lex Friedman, you'll find it. I'm listening to it on Spotify, I think. So they talk about this one thing that I knew nothing about, mechanistic interpretability. Mechanistic interpretability. And it's basically this process of reverse engineering these large language models into terms that we humans can understand, and that we can process. And, it comes down to just an easier way, casual understanding of how these neural networks work and how they process information specifically. Part of that is, we obviously don't want these machines to get ahead of us and to a point where we can't understand what they're doing, or we're just going, oh, you leave Johnny in the corner. What harm is he going to do? You want to be on top of this. You want to monitor. You want to, there has to be, just clarity and it's got to be transparent. There has to be transparency to these models, and we need to understand what they're doing. And so this mechanistic interpretability is a term based on reverse engineering these models and figuring out what they do and allowing humans to understand that. Another big topic that they discussed is basically safety and the fear that these machines are optimizing against us, and then they'll gang up together. So OpenAI and Anthropic and all of these machines will gang up together and take out the human race, basically. So this is sort of the worst case scenario concern of people. Obviously there's a lot of lower level concerns, losing jobs, replacing people, blah, blah, blah. All very important as well. But completely, annihilating the human race is I'd say right at the top of those concerns. And so listening to this gentleman on this podcast, he is actually very concerned with safety. And they have created something called RSP, which stands for Responsible Scaling Policy, which basically has put in place checks and balances to make sure that as they're scaling, and I'm trying to read notes while I'm telling you this because I can't remember all of these acronyms and stuff, but as they're scaling, they're basically going in and checking on things. And it's like this if-then model, as I recall, where if this certain criteria is met, then we're going to do this. So in other words, don't force safety protocol or safety processes into the mix until you need to. And so if this happens, then we do this. And it sounds ingenious, but I just wonder, how far they're going to go with it. Is money going to overrule safety and security, or does it just continue to become a free-for-all? So, it's interesting. I mean, the crazy thing about AI, beyond all of the obvious stuff, is the amount of money it's generating and the amount of money being invested into it is tells you really how big this thing is, obviously, but also it is going to continue to drive and direct, I think, people to do good or bad things. And at the end of the day, we need people to do good things. We need, this is one of those double-edged sword scenarios where it can be used to, cut food or to protect yourself, or it can be used to go out and murder people and steal their car. And so, counting on humanity to do the right thing is always a bit of a scary thought. And so we'll see. I'm following it very closely. Hopefully you're following it, because it is, as I continue saying, it's coming. And you either understand it and use it to your benefit, or you become a victim to it in some sense, or you're ignorant to the capabilities and to what it's doing to your lifestyle, or what it might do to your lifestyle, or whatever. And so yeah, interesting. So I've heard some bad news over the past couple of weeks. I've heard, especially this week. This week's been a weird week of staff cuts in some different companies and people moving around and stuff. Moving around, Tina Rath. I don't know if you've heard or if you know her, but Tina, as I'm reading this to you, I think it was announced yesterday. I knew about it a little earlier than that, but Tina left Four-Wall and has joined her old boss, Mike Cannon, at Mainlight. And I think it's a really good fit. It's a good fit for both parties. I think Tina is one of those roll up your sleeves and work really hard for my customers types of people. And Mainlight like to see themselves, I think the old Four-Wall quote was small enough to care, big enough to something. I don't remember. So yeah, Tina's gone. Congratulations. Good luck to you. And I don't know if this means that we're going to start seeing the floodgates opening at Four-Wall. I don't think so. I've certainly had some conversations with people who are considering moves. We'll see where that goes. Obviously, again, we've talked about it so many times. We need to see them get out of this cycle that they're in and either sell the company or get reinvested or whatever it is. But pull out of this, because there's vendors and suppliers and staff and all kinds of people out there, customers, who really want this thing resolved, and it needs to be resolved. And I've got some inside information on what's going on right now, which I won't share on the podcast, but there's a lot of stuff happening at Four-Wall right now, and let's just hope for the best. And sadly, very good friend of the show, very good and very recent podcast guest, and a great friend of mine, Cosmo Wilson, has parted ways with Gateway, which is interesting because he just talked on our podcast about his relationship with Gateway and about how great those people are, etc. And now suddenly he's gone. So I just found out about this yesterday morning, I believe. And so by the time you hear this podcast, I'm sure that's public information and I'm not sharing any secrets. But yeah, I'm kind of sad for that. I think he was, in a sense, a big part of that company as far as just how it makes you feel, doing business or talking about Gateway. And I still love a lot of the people there. Don't get me wrong. Dave Haskell is one of my favorite people. But yeah, it sucks. And then the other it sucks change this week is Mark Ravenhill departing Christie. So I never completely understood that position. I'm one of these old school, sales leaders, I guess, who believes that salespeople should have sales targets. And he was basically in a sales position without a sales target, similar to Cosmo in a sense. Cosmo will say, I wasn't a sales guy. But at the end of the day, if you're out there preaching the good word of Christy Lights or of Gateway, you are a salesperson in a sense. You're promoting the company and you're bringing customers to the company. You're a salesperson. So to me, any role where you're in a sales type role, but you do not have a sales target, you don't have goals, you don't have specific, let's get $1 million in the door this week or whatever it is. It's challenging. That can create all kinds of problems in my opinion. And it's odd that both of them are gone in the same week. And I don't know that I'm smart and have anything to do with what that is. I don't know if that's the reason, but to me, there's a similarity between those two roles. They were both, spokesmodels for those companies, and yet didn't have sales targets, probably were not paid commissions or any kind of incentive-based pay. So anyways, best of luck to both of them. Obviously, Cosmo is going to be back out with AC/DC soon. Sadly, not with Aerosmith, but knowing Cosmo, his calendar for next year is going to be completely packed with bands we know about and bands we don't know about yet. So I know he mentioned on the podcast last week or 2 weeks ago that he's actually turned down a couple things. And so maybe he'll go back and relook at some of those things because, with Gateway gone, not only is that an opening on your schedule, but it's also an opening in your bank account. You want that money coming in still. What else? I think that's really all that I had to share with you today. So please remember to like and subscribe and share our podcast. Obviously, that helps us. That helps the sponsors. It helps the guests a lot because it gets it out bigger. And one in particular that you've seen recently is Mr. Brickman, Mark Brickman. So it's been one of the most viewed, shared, liked, commented podcasts that we've ever done. It's been very popular. And it's because, it was a great conversation. It was a great talk, and Mark is quite famous, and obviously David Gilmour is a big deal, and it might be his last tour. Who knows? So, yeah, like, share, subscribe. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And so on to today's guest, who has been on the podcast before back in 2020. I believe he was on with Joe Cole. And they were talking about drive-in raves that they were doing at the time. And you can go back and listen to episode 111 if you really want to hear today's guest's background and some of the things that he's done in his past and why he is attached to the lighting business. We'll talk a little bit about that today. But Neil Juneja is a business and intellectual property attorney. He is the founder and managing partner of Gleam Law, a firm headquartered in Seattle, Washington. His impeccable track record and years of experience in the formation, growth, and exit strategies of businesses throughout the world, as well as navigating the complexities of patents, trademarks, and copyrights with clients in 46 states and on 5 continents. The majority of his practice focuses on trademark protection of cannabis brands in state and federal law, as well as patent protection for cannabis inventions. Neil has I remember some cannabis inventions back 40 years ago in my life. Where was I? Neil has over 20 years of experience in entrepreneurship, business consultation, entertainment, lighting, and technology industries. Neil understands unique business needs of clients of every size. And that's it. So please welcome Neil Juneja back to the podcast. Neil, is that vodka in that cup or is it coffee?
It's coffee. I never drink and lawyer.
Oh, really?
Are you kidding?
Wow.
These are people's businesses you're dealing with.
Yeah.
There's no room for error.
Yeah. I like drunk lawyers. They're my favorite lawyers.
Well, that's in the evening.
So, you're basically mostly in the weed business, I think, right? Like you do law for people who are in that industry. You're not in the business, but they are.
So that was our big claim to fame. So we, it's funny as a backstory. I grew up a little bit in the rave scene and grew up smoking weed every day and went to law school 20 years ago, and I just lost interest in cannabis.
Yeah.
So in law school, I go and apply for a lot of jobs, and I don't know how to do this. I was at the top of my field in multiple fields, and I keep getting rejected. I'm like, all right, I need to narrow the field further. So I do a physics degree at the same time as my law degree while I'm running the lighting
Oh,
company, become a
Jesus.
patent attorney.
Yeah.
So I end up getting started. A lot of my lighting clients turned into legal clients. And like, okay, I've got a lot of clients. I have no idea how to practice law. Law school is a waste of time and money in terms of giving you useful skills.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just a rite of passage and a gauntlet, and maybe make
Yeah.
you suffer so you charge a lot, high rates and keep the rates up there.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for that, by the way.
hey, it
Appreciate
wasn't
that.
me.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
need to talk
Yeah.
to the deans of all of these cash cow
Yeah.
universities.
True. Yeah.
So um, I'm meeting with other attorneys trying to learn how to run a business, hiring attorneys to teach me, and they keep telling me, got to do this cannabis law thing. Got to do this cannabis law thing. This is the future. I'm like, you know what? That was my youth. I am not going to slum it. Next thing you know, 2 years later, I represent against my will. Some of my previous clients get the first cannabis licenses in the state of Washington, which is within a few weeks of the first in the country. And I'm on CNN that morning, and I'm on the cover of Newsweek, and not the cover. I'm in Newsweek by name, and I'm in Time magazine. I'm like, guess this is
Why?
what I am. So you can't avoid your destiny.
Yeah.
And so I pivoted very hard into cannabis, opened up offices all over the West Coast, tried to expand to the East Coast. Things were like the .com era. In terms of just we're renting mansions with waterfalls and arcades for the staff. It was that time period, and it was a fantastic ride. Well, over the last 3 or 4 years, a couple years, 5 to 10 years after the original states, the industry contracts very heavily.
Yeah.
Why? It's hyper capitalized. It's hyper competitive. Everybody thought this is going to be 70% margins. No, it's not. It's agriculture. There's only
Yeah.
so much cannabis a person can consume, and you are producing 5 to 10 times more than that in every state.
Yeah.
So there's still the golden age on the East Coast and all the states that open, and that goes a couple years and then it collapses. Um,
Yeah.
so now we do a
You
lot of
know,
commercial
it's been good
litigation.
though. It's been good for the users, right? Because the prices seem to have gone down. And I don't smoke weed at all, so my girlfriend has never in her life done any kind of drug. She doesn't even drink. And so when we were in Canada this summer or last summer, we went into one of the weed stores, and I was just asking the girl all kinds of questions. And she was giving me all these answers, and I was learning so much and about how it all goes and stuff. But she's giving me prices. And I was like, when I was a kid, it was like 3 times that much, and we were buying it from a dude in a plaid shirt. Like now you're buying it in a nice fancy store, and it's that cheap, really? And so I couldn't believe how low the prices have gone on that stuff.
That's a race to the bottom. The margins are pretty slim these days.
Yeah,
Uh, so it's totally an interesting industry, and it's a very interesting plant. So I extremely rarely consume now. Like I said, I stopped in law school 20 years ago for no
yeah,
apparent reason.
yeah.
Um, but it's 130 cannabinoids that we've identified so far. Thousands of terpenes that we already knew about, which were flavor profiles prior to being used in the cannabis context. The weird thing is, 300 million years ago, there's an endocannabinoid system in all life, and it just happens that cannabis is one of the things that triggers it. There's a
Huh.
couple other things that do, so we're really just tapping into a natural system that we are just starting to understand all of the different cannabinoids. There's not just the get high one. CBD was huge. We're learning about THCV, which may be an appetite suppressant or maybe a type of
What is
accelerant
THCV?
buffer. THCV is tetrahydrocannabinol slash V. I don't know.
Yeah, but what does the V mean? Do we know?
I'm sure we do.
Yeah, I meant
I
we you, because I don't fucking know. I
I
have no
don't. I
idea,
mean,
Neil.
there's like I said, there's 130 identified so far. CBN helps with sleep, and we just got some recent studies that showed it helps increase both REM and non-REM sleep. So I mean, we're talking
Interesting.
about very natural substances that are super beneficial once we figure all of this out.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think there's a lot of benefits, self-medication for people. It's not just about getting under the influence.
Yeah, yeah. Well, for most people I know who do it, it is. Most of the people I know, they're doing it to be under the influence, you know.
Absolutely,
Yeah, it ain't a health
absolutely.
thing. You know,
Which is
they'll eat an apple if they want to get healthy.
which
Uh,
is fine. You know, the weird thing though is everybody, because they're trying to get high, the breeding and selection has been very directed towards the substances. Delta 9 tetrahydrocannabinol is THC, or THC acid, when it has this carboxyl group, is the thing that gets you high.
yeah,
So we've been selectively breeding to make that the main cannabinoid, which means that we are actually reducing the amount of the other cannabinoids that may have an entourage effect and may have other benefits that
yeah,
we just aren't experimenting on and aren't in the cannabis of, like, when, I smoked in the 90s.
yeah. But the thing is, isn't it like 10 times as potent now? Like, isn't it, doesn't
Yeah,
one hit make you as high as a whole joint did when we were kids?
absolutely. I mean, I grew
Why?
up in
Why does it
Cleveland.
have to be so powerful?
I mean, selective breeding, really good geneticists. It used to be 2.5, 3% THC by dry weight. Now they're hitting 30 to 40%. It's just
Holy
crazy.
shit.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's so
Well,
it is
that's what
definitely
happens when you get guys in lab coats growing weed, right? Like,
it's a
shit
different
gets real
thing.
good, you know? It gets good fast. Yeah, I mean, back then it was just the fact that they could keep a plant alive shocked me. You know, I'm looking
Well,
at
it's a
these guys
weed.
going, how did you not kill that thing? Like, how'd you remember to water it? Because the guy's sitting there going, with his eyes closed and listening to Black Sabbath and stuff, you know? So, but I mean, do you ever pinch yourself and go, God, if you would have told me when I was in law school that I'd be making a living off weed dealers, you know?
Um, I uh I actually bring this up every time I see my family. My mom caught me when I was in high school, 10th grade or something, with weed. And she's like, old traditional Indian woman, you are never gonna make money on the weed. Or no,
Yeah.
no, no. The actual phrase was, you're never gonna make a living on the weed.
Yeah.
And I
Gotta bet.
called her every week, told her, look at me now, mom.
Yeah. Hold my beer, mommy. Watch this shit. That's hilarious. That's really, yeah, no, I mean, because that's the funny thing is like I could imagine you growing up in a traditional Indian family and that shit don't fly, right? So that's funny. That's
Not at
hilarious.
all.
What about, I don't know, so when I was in Canada this year, one of the things that I was exposed to, convinced to try, was microdosing, which is basically a fancy word for a very small amount of mushrooms inside a capsule that looks like a vitamin or a supplement or something that is sold legally from a pharmacist online, basically, right? Like, I mean,
Let's not say legally.
well,
Um, so it's
I
still
I ordered it on
Schedule.
a website and it showed up at my door. You
Yeah,
know?
and I mean, I'd like to see the COAs on that, the certificate of analysis. I find that some of these products are actually an analog of DMT, but
Ah,
psilocybin's very cheap to produce. So unlike cannabis with 130 cannabinoids and all these terpenes and flavor profiles that have effects, we're talking about 2 to 3 active ingredients. So it's just a source material when you're looking at cubensis or mushrooms in general. Cubensis are one of the 3 species that produce psilocybin. That I'm aware of. So you have psilocin, which converts into psilocybin, and there's a third one that I believe is an isomer of one. So it's a very, very simple, just raw ingredient. So it is illegal under Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substance Act federally in the US. However, it's decriminalized in Seattle. I think Colorado just decrimmed it. I mean, nobody's enforcing it.
yeah.
Um, and the microdosing effect is just off the charts. We just didn't do 3 or 4 years ago. We did, my law firm did the legal work on a study with the Royal College of London and an organization in Jamaica on microdosing and effects. And they had to keep restarting it because the efficacy was off the charts, unbelievable. It had to be wrong. And we're talking about major cures, or at least such a high degree of difference. We're talking the 60% range of curing anxiety and depression. It's
Yeah.
just insane.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great thing in the future. It's definitely a very powerful drug, and that makes it very dangerous.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to seeing how culture develops and how the science develops on it. And
Yeah.
I've got to do a pitch. I would like to say that I personally, after 5 years of working on it, have gotten the first psilocybin federal trademarks in the US. So
Really?
if they haven't issued yet, they've already published, and we haven't put out the press release on it. So this is the breaking news here
That's
first.
interesting. So do you see it becoming fully legal in any states anytime soon?
I think we're going in that direction the same way as we are with cannabis.
Yeah.
If you had a crystal ball and you could determine which way politics are about to go or are going to go, I mean, I would be investing all my money in you.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, I
it's
mean, it's
really
it's
tough to
it's
predict.
interesting because I'm on the fence with it all. Like, I'm one of these, you know, old fuddy-duddy people who isn't really fond of the whole weed being legalized thing. Just because in my experience, in my own life experience, people I know who smoke weed every day are not more productive. They're generally not more productive. They're not less doing things illegally. They're not. I'm not saying they're bad people. I'm just saying it doesn't make you go, okay, let's go do something massive today. It makes you go, hey, you got any Fruit Loops?
Yeah, I mean, I think that stereotype is earned. Some
Yeah,
people are more effective of it. The thing is, I think we're probably both more of a freedom-loving people in
yeah,
general. And if people want
yeah,
to do whatever they want to do in the privacy of their own home and it doesn't bother other people, it's none of my business. Have at it.
yeah, yeah. I'm for that. But again, the legalization thing, I think, in my opinion, and this is probably an opinion that'll be argued by everyone, is it tells kids it's okay. Just like if you could go back and change whether or not alcohol became legal. There's no report that I've ever read that said alcohol is good for you. Except that it makes ugly people look pretty and it therefore widens your chances of getting laid. But other than that, you know.
Um, I mean, I think without alcohol, the world population would be much smaller. Due
Very true.
specifically to
Yeah,
that, your
very true.
tolerance for who you're going to sleep with
Very
has
true.
definitely changed dramatically.
Yeah, very, very true. Very true.
But as a societal impact, I mean, it's a gruesome social interaction, but also it's a pretty negative societal impact. I
Yeah,
mean, on the other hand, we saw a lot more lights when there's alcohol at the concert.
very true. Yeah. No, but I mean the weed thing is funny because I think because of the amount of business that happened, it was like an oil boom kind of thing. And um a lot of the science or whatever it was called, like, oh, CBD does this and CBD does this and CBD does this and CBD does this and all of this does this. And I wasn't believing most of that shit because to me, weed gets you high and makes you have a good time and makes music sound better and those types of things. I'm not saying it should be illegal. I'm just saying I don't think it's necessarily the miracle drug or whatever. However, mushrooms appear to be the miracle drug. Like mushrooms really do appear to have those benefits.
It's funny, as things were starting to get moving in the whole mushroom world over the last 2, 3 years, I had people, famous lawyers that you would know the name of, reach out to me and say, I've actually been microdosing for 10 years and here's how you
Wow.
grow. And I'm like,
Huh.
why are you even telling me?
Yeah.
I don't
Just in
understand why
case,
I'm the
just in
person
case
that you're
they need an
confiding
attorney
in.
soon. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
apparently, there has been an undercurrent of usage among highly functional people, highly successful people as well. And I had no idea.
Well, I know the people I know in Canada who are highly successful, functional people, uh, you know, they're microdosing regularly. And so, I'm not like saying I'm an advocate for it. I'm not saying it's the greatest thing in the world. I did it a couple times and went, you know what? This does make me feel pretty good. The first time actually got me wasted because I'm so drug free. I don't do anything. And so it got me pretty wasted and pretty happy. But still very alert and very like focused at the same time, which is crazy. And so I actually had a really good meeting, although I was quite funny during that meeting. But I can see my own self. I don't have anxiety, but I'm always like, okay, what's next? What's next? Like some form of anxiety, I guess. I'm A type, very A type, and so it mellowed me out a little bit and just kind of leveled some things out a bit, I guess, when I've tried it. Um, I see the benefit. Like I know some people who have real problems in Canada, and this one of the people who was the biggest advocate who said, Marcel, you got to try it, you got to try it, you got to try it, and it saved his life. It literally saved his life. He was I don't know if it was schizophrenic or something, but very, big mental issues. And it saved his life. So who knows? Maybe. And Joe Rogan thinks it's the miracle cure for many, many things. So,
I mean, I think it's worth, I mean, these things are generally safe, at least from a physical standpoint. So if people are having trouble with things, it's not, in most scenarios, going to break you to try it. If it's a small amount. Now, I'm not advocating drug use for people that aren't ready for it at all,
yeah.
but it does
Yeah.
have a lot of promise. And I'm really excited to see where the culture goes and where it moves society forward. From a business standpoint, I don't think it's a big business for us, but it's very on brand to
Yeah.
work in this area. And I'm very
Yeah.
happy to see it helping people.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. So you were, before I went off on this tangent, you were telling me that your firm has basically shifted into more probably IP work.
No, we're a bit spread out on anything a business needs, which is not the great tagline. Still working on that one. So we do a lot of business law, intellectual property, and then a ton of commercial litigation. So there's always somebody getting sued around here.
Yeah.
So we're pretty focused on those areas. I actually own lightinglaw.com, which is a fun area. I just deal with lighting issues in our industry
Oh,
anywhere.
that's cool.
Um, I get a lot of calls from Europe, in which case I can barely find that on a map, let alone I'm not licensed there. Although
Yeah,
Europe has better IP rules in some scenarios, especially for copyright.
right.
So, when it comes down to our industry, meaning lighting and outlaw, it's a lot of contracts and dealing with some liability when a trust falls down on somebody's head. Shitty riggers. And,
Yeah,
and a lot of trademark and patent work. So that's always fun in the production industry and the lighting industry.
yeah.
Um,
I met
a
you
little
a
bit.
couple years. I met you a couple years too late because I think I told you last time, but I went through a trademark lawsuit with trademark had been stolen from me by one of the world's largest companies, starts with G, and the trademark, which hangs on my wall right over here, I still own it. But in the end, because I got really bad advice, basically, a fellow I know in Silicon Valley, advised me on the whole process, and he convinced me that I needed to file in Silicon Valley. Um, it would have been really wise for me to file down here in South Florida. But instead, I filed in Silicon Valley. And what I learned is every judge, every lawyer, everyone in the legal business at some point either worked for or will work for or wants to work
Mhm.
for that company. And so you can't be treated fairly. And, the whole, David versus Goliath thing that I thought I had going for me just beat me over the head like a freaking stick across my face. And
Yeah, I mean, you gave them home team advantage, and you're also paying more for lawyers at market rate over there than you would be locally.
when I have to
Um,
fly up there for depositions, I have to fly up there, if it goes to trial, everything about it was wrong. Everything about it, it just didn't work for me. But by the time I figured that out, I was too far in. I'm Canadian. We're not litigious people. I learned a lot in 2 years of fighting this company. I spent $1 million. They spent an estimated $12 million trying to kill me. And in the end, what happened was they actually hired my one of my employees, out of the blue, highest paid guy in my company, treated like God. My sister had just gone to his wedding. My sister, who works for me, had just gone to his wedding like a couple months earlier. Out of the blue, he just resigns, and no talking about it, nothing. Just sent in a resignation letter. Well, a few weeks later, suddenly, I get a call from my attorney. I'm actually or I think I just got off a plane in Canada, and my attorney calls and he goes, "Have you seen the news yet? Have you seen your email yet?" And I said, "No. Why? What happened?" And he said, "Somehow Google just got, or I'm sorry, the large company in Silicon Valley
back that.
just got 26,000 files. Discovery was closing the next day. We had delivered about 1,500 items that we thought were relevant. And really, we went by the word of the law, right? And we delivered around 1,500 items. Somebody gave them 26,000 items. And we came to find out that it was this employee of ours who we presume they hired him. We never proved it, so this is, hearsay at this point. But so he not only delivered them 26,000 files from our Google Drive, by the way, but he then deleted the drive. So we no longer even knew what those files had in them. We didn't even know what he had delivered to them. 26,000 items. We had no idea what they were. And so now basically they went to the judge and said, these guys are playing around with, discovery law, and they're just making a mockery of this California court system, and they need to be punished. And through this process, they got a summary judgment. And and it was literally, we had 1 day to go. A couple days later, they would have been negotiating. At the time, by the way, the damages were estimated, because I had to hire an expert, damages were estimated over $200 million. And the clock was still ticking. And so all of a sudden, I've got this summary judgment against me. And I've been dealing with this 2 years, along with divorce at the same time. So it was brutal. And so I was just like, you know what? This is a sign. It's time to stop. And so I just had my attorney go to them and get me a release. And I walked away.
But sometimes that's a better way to go. A lot of times litigation is just a money game as well. I mean, who can throw more money at it and bury the other
certainly when you're
person?
against a $1 trillion company, they win. Like every deposition, every time I had to meet with them for mediation, whatever it was, it would be me and my lawyer and these 6 people on the other side in like $5,000-$6,000 suits, and with a person to carry their bag for them and everything. They were getting, they had like $1,700, $1,800, $2,000 an hour lawyers. And I got my, I called him Aaron Brockovich, because it was a little family law firm in Silicon Valley. And so, yeah, I learned a lot in that process.
Yeah.
And it was
It's an
painful.
expensive lesson.
Well, everyone said that I would win in appeal. But the thing is, if I lost, next step is I'm responsible for $12 million in legal fees on the other side. And that would have bankrupted me. And so I just said, I'm taking my life back. And so I have a settlement document that says, we stole your trademark. You still own it. It's yours to keep. And like a week or two later, they changed the name of the thing that they had stolen from me. And it's unreal, man. It is unreal.
Did you guys consider going to the court of public opinion and just blowing out through the PR world exactly what's happening here? Because that's not a type of company that wants to be known as a big baddie.
Yeah, so I watched a movie that I forget what the movie was called, $1 Billion Code. It's a really good movie. If you ever get a chance, watch it. It's the only thing is it's what do they call it when it's in a language and then they're talking, they put in English. So what's that called?
Subtitled?
Dubbed or subtitles or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's the only downside of it, because it's like, I think they're from Belgium or something, but they created Google Maps. These guys created Google Maps, and through a friend, eventually they were connected to Google. And, long story short, Google lowballed an offer to them to just buy their company. They said, no, but, we'd like to work with you. Let's do something. And they said, okay, we'll do something. And they dragged them along a while and then just dumped them. And so these guys were practically bankrupt by then. And then all of a sudden, weeks later, Google Maps comes out, and it's their code. Exactly. Like, it looks like their code. Everything about it is their code. And so they sued Google and lost. And, it was so exactly like my story. The only difference is they got a movie out of the deal, a Netflix movie out of the deal or whatever. I didn't. And so I went to my attorney and I said, I want to write a book. I want to go to Netflix. I want to do all these things. I want to go to the court.
Government probably doesn't permit that.
Well, it doesn't. But
Yeah.
but even before that, so even before that, I was like, I want to do all these things. And he said, Marcel, you don't want to just poke the bear. You don't want to sit there and poke the bear, because they've already shown they want to crush you. Like, what I learned is basically a company like that doesn't want to beat you. They want to beat everyone like you who thinks they can try and go after them. And you know, I learned a valuable lesson. Little guys never win against big guys in lawsuits.
I
Money
mean,
wins.
I've definitely taken on, we've got some massive lawsuits against Fortune 50 companies right now,
Yeah,
and we'll hold toe to toe with them.
yeah,
It just depends on what the matter is. And I've definitely gotten settlements out of, I'm in Seattle, so let's just say one of the largest companies here. And
yeah.
it wasn't that hard, but it just depends if they are going to go toe to toe with you or if they're going to just give you fuck off money.
Yeah. Well, that's all I expected was fuck off money. And, they wouldn't do it. I mean, I learned that they basically have a playbook that they follow. And that playbook says we'll spend up to 15 million or whatever it is, like different lawsuits or different things or whatever. And when they get to that number, then they go settle. Before that, they don't. And that's all there is to it. They're not going to settle because that admits fault and that creates a line at your door of other people that are going to sue you, I guess. So,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Amazon, for instance, I was talking to their general counsel a couple years ago, and they're getting 50 to 100 lawsuits a week. So they're just constantly suing. There's a whole department that just has to do document retainment. Every time they get
oh
sued, they
my
go and
God.
get all the data and protect it because now it's under a threat of lawsuit. So they
That
can't
is
cause what's
so
called
tough.
spoliation.
That's brutal.
So.
I think I've been sued twice in my whole life, and both times it almost killed me. It was like, what? I didn't do it. You
The
know?
bills are brutal. I don't even sue people personally. I had a case against my landlord in my current office. I'm like, okay, I can get 2 or 3 grand, two or 300 grand, and we can do it in house. Like, I don't want to spend the time doing this. I'll just go out and get more clients and do my work. Plus, it keeps you up at night, which and that's no fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that was a
so
decision I ended up taking, Neil, is just, I'm going to go, reclaim my company because this was hurting my company. I took $1 million in legal fees basically out of my company over a couple of years. And just what it did to my health and to my mental well-being and stuff, it was
Mhm.
just miserable. So I just said enough already. I tapped out. And the crazy thing is, I still own the trademark and the story and everything else. Um, I could go back after them because, we did discover this employee that they presumably hired. And so some things in the case changed and we could go relitigate it. And I've had somebody come to me and offer to do that in a partnership. I just don't want to do it. I just don't want to do it. So don't try
life
and
is too
talk me into it again, Neil.
I would
Exactly. Life
not.
is too
Life is
short.
too short. My job is to
Yeah.
talk people out of litigation.
Yeah. Good
And
for you.
so I
You're
do a lot of the
a lawyer then.
negotiations here. So we
Yeah.
only end up in litigation if I failed my job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only, I mean, there's a lot of times it makes sense, but my job is to keep us out.
You're a good attorney. Like I like attorneys who my attorney that I use down here is like that too. He's like, you don't want to go to court,
No.
and I don't want to go to court. He's right. I really don't want to go to court. So I've settled, like even my divorce got settled in mediation. We never did go to trial. And so, it's a terrible thing, but I learned an awful lot about trademark law in the process.
Yeah, oh, I love trademark law. It's a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite areas of law, and I do it maybe a third of every day. I was at the office till 12:30 p.m. last night. I guess it's a.m. For the
Yeah.
last 4 hours working on it. But yeah, the other problem is if you go to court, it doesn't matter how good your case is. Sometimes things go sideways, and it's best to remove uncertainty from business as much as
Yeah.
possible.
Yeah. Very well
Or
said.
in your case, even divorce. You
Yeah.
never know what the
Yeah.
results may go, especially if there's a
No.
jury.
No, I mean there's been well even this decision like my attorney was floored. My attorney was like I can't believe it. Like I can't believe they got a summary judgment on this. I can't believe it. It's shocking, but whatever. It happened. So what about AI? So I want to ask you a couple of questions about AI. Number 1, to me, the legal business is one that's going to be impacted by AI. I think legal and medical are two of the big ones because it's based on research. And with AI, you can research a lot faster and without cost. And then the second question is, just your thoughts on AI in our industry and people being able to protect art and all of those types of things. So
Oof. Second one's a doozy.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the first one, I think AI is already replacing the lower level lawyers, and good. You know, if it's
Yeah.
really that
I agree.
simple, why are we paying people $500 an hour to do it?
Yeah.
Um, you know, for what I do, I mean, a lot of it's business consultation as well.
Yeah.
And AI is not anywhere near it. Maybe someday, but there's a lot of intangibles there. But maybe it can then read intonations of voices when you're negotiating and things of that nature.
Yeah.
And you always need somebody to go into court. Uh,
I'm thinking
Hopefully.
more contract and research stuff. Like that's the stuff that makes lawsuits really, really expensive. And obviously AI can do it with, at least a lower cost, if not a zero cost.
We just actually added, so we use a legal database called Westlaw that's through the Thomson Reuters company or corporation or
Yeah.
conglomerate or whatever you want to call it. And we just added in a number of AI features they had that nothing's cheap when they're charging lawyers.
Yeah.
But I was running through it last night on contract review and it was halfway there. But it really does speed up some of our research. We still have to go into it and say, okay, you know, we can argue this or that and maybe tap on this case and push in this direction. And so far, you know, our creativity exceeds that. And I think at least where AI stands right now, you look at books written by AI and they're derivative. You know, there's no originality. It's not capable of that with large language models. It's just
Yeah.
isn't.
Yeah.
Unless there's a different version of AI that's going to come out, it is not a function of the current systems.
Well, one of the things that AI is doing, because AI is limited by data, so the more data you can feed to it, the more information that it has to gleam from. Get it? so, you know, so what they're doing now is AI is able to create data. And so one of the things that people are working on now in testing and all kinds of things, some of these larger AI companies, is these AI systems that are creating their own data so that they can expand data much more quickly than it's expanding organically.
Data has to come from somewhere. A computer cannot randomize. It's not a thing. So if you type in, you know, let's say on any programming language, random 1 through 10, you know, or give me a random number generator, it's not a thing. It is choosing the 10,000 second of the clock when you hit enter, or it's coming from it from somewhere. It can't make up data. It's still derivative. I
Yeah.
think there's a tech company in Silicon Valley that got around this a little bit by having a wall of lava lamps they shoot a camera at. And that's where they derive their random data for algorithms or for encryption. So
Interesting.
otherwise,
That's
yeah, it's a
really
really cool
interesting. I'm gonna have to
concept and
look
it's
that one up.
functional.
Yeah.
Uh, Otherwise, data cannot be invented. It has to be derived. That's the way it is.
Well, so do you know who Lex Friedman is?
I
Podcaster, really smart
I do not.
podcaster. If
Your
you get a
podcast
chance,
is the only podcast I listen to.
oh, get out of here, Neil. Um, it just came out like yesterday or something, but I was listening to it this morning on my walk, and it's really really good. They've got the CEO and co-founder of Anthropic, one of the big large language model AI companies, on. And he talks about a lot of this stuff, and he talks about AI being able to write its own data. And because this is the thing that, if anything, will hold back AI from moving more quickly is, just running out of data, hitting the ceiling and going, okay, I need more information. And so it's generating that information.
Yeah, it's still garbage in, garbage out, or derivation, I would think. But that's super interesting. I'll look into that.
Yeah, 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 it is. It is. So on the second question though, and again, I'm not picking on lawyers because the lawyers that I've used for the most part are advisors. They're not just like contract law. Most of the time I do it myself and I'll send it to the lawyer and just say, "Hey, bless this, please, will you? Is this okay?" And he'll say, "Oh, you spelled this word wrong on page 7, paragraph, 4A." And but I use lawyers for exactly what you're talking about. Like, advise me, give me advice. I'm in a negotiation. What do you think about the different options or strategy here in this negotiation? And a good lawyer should be able to work with you in that regard. Otherwise, they're going to be out of work because if they're just doing contracts, copy and paste, Boilermaker contracts or whatever, it's just not going to work.
And I mean, this AI model I was telling you about with it's called CoCounsel with God, I'm really not trying to advertise overpriced software. My legal database and AI program. I have fed contracts into it and said, analyze the gaps here. And it's been kind of cool. A lot of it needs to be reviewed. It's not complete,
Yeah.
but it has popped up things and made my job more efficient, which is
That's what
great.
it
It
should be.
saves everybody
Yeah.
money.
That's what it should do. And, so and then again the other one, medical, just because again AI is pretty good at researching. And so when you look at things like cancer, that we've got probably 40, 50 years into trying to find cure for cancer, I would guess that 50 years could be condensed to like 3 months or something using AI. And so I think we're going to get a cure to cancer. I think we're going to get a cure to Alzheimer's, to, what do they call them? The four horsemen: heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, and what's the fourth one? I forget.
Maybe diabetes, but I think we're almost, is it
Diabetes. Yeah.
diabetes? We're getting
Diabetes.
real close with a lot of the CRISPR technology and
Yeah.
well, that's Cas9. There's also Cas12, and
Yeah.
so there's a lot of fun stuff coming up with that. And I think the way to actually solve all the medical issues isn't just AI, but it's a simulated body down to the atomic level, with the 13 trillion or whatever cells we have, and then actually being able to see the chemical and biological reactions or biochem
Yeah.
reactions, electrical reactions simulated, and we're
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
that's it. And
Well,
that's
and
a cool feeling.
part of that is, you know, I think changing insurance systems and stuff like that needs to happen, because right now all we're doing is treating. We're not trying to avoid getting sick. We're not trying to keep people healthier. We're trying to fix them once they're broken, and because it's profitable, obviously, right? But like I pay for testing because I want to do 100 things, and if I go to my doctor and use my insurance, they're only going to test 20 things or whatever, right? But I want to test for heavy metals. I want to test for a lot of other things that they don't test for. So I go to functional medicine doctors, and you can buy these tests that are 200 things or whatever, and the cost is coming down. But why doesn't health insurance pay for that? Because that's making me a healthier person. I'm not going to use your insurance as much.
You
Stupid.
know, I'm surprised they don't completely do that because I go in and I tell the doctor I also want to test my liver enzymes, for instance, and a
Yeah,
number of other things. And they're like, okay, fine. And
yeah,
I mean, I assume insurance is covering it because I don't get bills.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, insurance does pay for some preventative things. One thing that comes immediately to mind is a vasectomy, because the second best thing you can do for the environment is not have children. The first is kill yourself.
Jesus, that deep. That's deep.
I'm
Yeah,
not
maybe you do
encouraging.
need a drink or some weed. You need to take the edge off there, son. So, what about back to the AI as it relates to our industry? And so I talk about AI a lot. It's something that not only am I interested in and curious about, but it's something I use on a daily basis because I have a small company with very few employees, and I need to try to be more efficient and do more things with less people because we work on a skinny margin too. And so, for me, AI is a godsend. And I talk to so many people who are like, it's the death of us all, and it's coming after my job, and all of these things, right? And it's just such a downer look at the whole thing. But one area I think that is a slippery slope is basically going to a concert, seeing a design, going back home and grabbing some AI thing and saying, give me all the cues from the current Beyonce tour or whatever. Give me so and so's lighting design from the current Beyonce tour or whatever.
I mean, it's always been copyright infringement to do that, but it's the lighting industry. We're pretty non-litigious overall, which I
Yeah,
learned right at the beginning of my career when nobody would sue anybody else, which is really kind of cool, but
it is.
also not great for a lawyer.
Yeah, yeah,
And I mean, we've always been emulating each other's designs. So what if you didn't get every cue? 5,000 people videotaped it on their phone at the concert instead of
yeah,
watching it. So you
yeah,
can rebuild their designs. The designer can sue you, or you could say, what is it? Emulation or imitation is the best form of flattery.
yeah,
Um, it moves the concepts forward. We have new tools, we get new movers or new lights in general, or just new effects in general. And we keep developing it.
yeah,
If we want to look at it as a whole mass of entertainment in and of itself, it should keep moving forward. Why should
Yeah.
somebody get some color combination or some layout and nobody else can use it?
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting topic, and it's similar to music because this happens in music obviously all the time
Mm.
where some of the famous ones like Stairway to Heaven was a ripoff of something else, and they had Led Zeppelin in court for I think 5 years or something over that, and I think ultimately they lost or they settled or something because I think the judge just got tired of it. It was like, please stop, you guys, would you? But I mean, there's only so many notes. You know what I mean? There's only so many notes and so many ways to put those notes together. So at some point, something is going to sound a little bit like something else. It doesn't mean you were inspired by it. It just means that it sounds a little bit like it, right?
Copyright law, especially with music, is a freaking mind's nest or rat's nest of
Yeah.
completely random decisions. There was one years ago, the Beatles got sued, and if you don't copy it, it's not an infringement of copyright. If you independently create it, it's fine. And the court basically came down to he must have overheard it at an airport when it was on the elevator music, and that's why he created a song so similar. Um, so there's four parts of fair use and copyright, and one of them is taking the heart of the matter effectively. One of the methods is transformative. So if you can transform the work enough, then it can work. But how is that different than deriving it or creating a derivative, which is infringement? It's tough, and where we draw those lines is really whether the artist should have ownership and how much ownership they should have their works of art over exactly what you're saying. There's only so many ways to do something.
Yeah.
So it's a very complex area of law, far more complex than it really seems when you look at it on the surface.
But I think that AI just really expands this problem with all these deep fakes and all this stuff that you're able to do with AI, where I could say, give me a picture of Neil, but put a cowboy hat on him and make him dance like a friggin' idiot or something.
That's not
Um,
possible.
well, I have that on
Yeah, I
video.
already
I
naturally
have
do
that on video. I got it from a bar like about 6 years ago. You might not remember. Um,
that.
but no, I mean it's an interesting thing. I have an attorney down here who does stuff for me, and his main practice is like pop stars and stuff. When any of the large companies or anyone basically copies their name, their music, their face, whatever it is, he goes after them. And a lot of times he's going after Google because people will use their name or whatever in AdWords buys, and Google is profiting from this. And it's a loose, I guess, interpretation of the law or whatever, but he wins settlements from them when he does it. And so I just think AI is going to take us deep, deep into that.
I mean, there is a bit of litigation that's going to be landmark right now as far as all that data that is protected by copyright that they are using, that AI is using to create the derivations. Um, isn't that copyright infringement? And it certainly is, at least on its face. Where the law comes out is going to be super interesting,
Yeah,
but it's going to be a long, lengthy battle. And I mean, you're still not going to end up being able to stop AI completely in terms of that area.
yeah.
But it is certainly some landmark stuff that we're all looking at, and who knows how the courts are going to fall out on it.
Well, essentially everything that AI does is plagiarism of some sort because it's grabbing that data from the internet. Somebody created that data. Somebody created the works that it's reading from to spit out this information.
But plagiarizing is not illegal. Copyright infringement is.
Yeah,
So
correct.
that's a different
Correct.
thing. I mean, if we're taking Wikipedia, those facts are pretty much free to use. It may be how that word choice is that may not be. So in
Yeah.
that scenario, and let's say they're reading it and not copying it, which isn't even possible for a computer because it still needs to be written onto some sort of data stiff format, whether it's RAM or a hard drive or whatever. Um, if it was just reading it and then reinterpreting it, it's not infringing on the copyright. So it's going to be very, very interesting
It'll
law
keep some
for
lawyers busy.
a lot of lawyers.
Well,
And I mean,
is it something that you're interested in? Like, is it something that you're paying a lot of attention to and following? And
um, anything that's cutting edge law is fun for us lawyers generally. I mean, you can look at property law and say, well, this has been around for since the birth of humanity, when somebody was stealing somebody's whale or land or river or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Cutting edge law is always fun from an academic standpoint.
Hmm.
And it's a big deal. I'm in Seattle. It's a big deal because we're surrounded by tech in all directions. And my girlfriend works pretty heavily high up in tech, and she deals with it as well. So it's not an uncommon topic at the dinner table.
Yeah. 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 It just seems like it's going to be the wild, wild west for the next however many years. And then we'll all be dead because AI is going to just completely annihilate us at some point. And,
Oh, it's
uh,
inevitable, but not with the large language models. I don't think they're capable of
no.
actual thinking process. We'd have to come up with a completely different model for AI to get it there.
Well, they're already working on those models.
Oh, I'm
Like they've already
sure.
got the multiple I forget what the layers are called, but we're basically on version 1 or whatever, and it's going up to version 4, and they originally thought that was going to take about 7 years or something, and now we're down to 2 or 3 years. So it's moving very quickly. It's moving quicker than they thought it was going to move,
I mean,
these
there's
companies.
acceleration in general. I mean, how long was it before the first flight to the first man on the moon? Oh, was that 30 years, 40 years? And now what are we doing?
Depends who you believe, Neil.
Well, I mean,
Did
was it Da
did it
Vinci
even
was
happen?
flying in a helicopter?
Did
Uh,
it even happen? Or was it filmed in a movie studio somewhere? I don't
plus,
know.
there's that transistor rule. Was that? It's not Godwin's rule. It's
Moore's Law?
Moore's law. Transistors double in a chip every 18 months.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it's still functioning as a law.
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is.
So that's
Yeah, it ain't
actually
slowing down. It ain't slowing down at all, that's for sure.
no. So you hold on, hold tight, or move to Alaska, Iceland, something like that, and live out your life. Who knows? I've got 1,000 islands up here. I have friends that live on
Yeah,
private islands. There's
there you
always an
go.
escape.
Always a place to go. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I got my little hole in the wall in Canada, and it's I don't necessarily agree with all their politics up there, but the cool thing about moving to another country, even if they've got crazy politics and stuff, as long as it's safe, you don't care if you don't earn your money there because I'm not paying taxes other than sales tax and real estate tax and whatever, use tax basically, but I'm not paying income tax up there, so it doesn't bother me as much, I guess. You
Yeah,
know,
I mean, I like a safe, secure place. I like a place with culture, people that you can talk to that are
oh hell
educated.
yeah. Hell
Those
yeah.
are always nice. I mean, poverty is unfortunate, but it's also dangerous at times.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you guys saw it firsthand up there. It got a little crazy over the
It
past
got a
few
little
years.
crazy, but I would like to actually reference that. You must be talking about the Chop Chaz, our takeover of the police
Yeah,
station. I
yeah,
say
yeah.
our because we were advocates of accountability. My issue with us doing it is I had lawyers out protesting. I'm like, you're just another person on the protest line. If you want to help, use your skills and
Yeah,
lawyer it.
yeah.
But the whole media attention is this. You see how it got taken over? No, it didn't. It was like 4 square blocks, and that was it. And it was a really cool concept at the beginning, but it really descended into hell eventually. And I lived 2 blocks from it, so tear gas was coming in now and again. It was an interesting time, but it wasn't
Yeah.
the same hellscape that was written about originally. It's just it descended into that eventually.
But the problem is anarchy usually does descend
It,
into that. You know what I mean? Like it usually lawlessness or whatever you want to call it, it usually descends to that. Like we
I don't
usually
agree. I mean,
yeah.
look at tribes started without rules, and then you had a chief of the tribe, and societies grow larger and larger. There's a point where it can work, and where this didn't work is
Mhm.
so right when it happened, the police abandoned the police station. It was a takeover, and it was a really multicultural group of people.
Mm.
Um, And at the time, it filled me with hope because I'd walk through and there were stages set up and talks given and people helping each other. And I saw Jewish what is the guy with the little yarmulke that talks at temple, or this was
Rabbi?
my religious understanding.
Rabbi.
It was a rabbi surrounded by Palestinians. He had his book open and they were going over the finer points of religion. And it was a really open conversation. And I was pretty impressed. And that's what filled me with hope is, hey, maybe this is where the vow breaks. And, maybe people start to understand each other a little bit. What happened was it became rudderless. No leaders stepped up and eventually descended to what it is, because then it becomes a power vacuum and the people who can exert power take it over.
Yeah.
But there was a point there where I was filled with hope for what it could be as
Yeah.
kind of a new path forward of understanding among many different types of people.
Well, when I said that it always descends, to the bottom, uh, that's sort of what I meant is like you said, a leader didn't step up, but generally when the leaders step up, they're corrupt. They're
Mm,
stepping up because that's the most profitable spot to be in. That's where I can collect all the money or whatever, whether it's a monarchy or a republican or a republic or a democracy or whatever it is. That leader is there, because for a reason. It's a power thing. It's a wealth thing, whatever it is. And we saw that with BLM. We saw it with some of the other ones. The people inside it probably had the best intentions.
mm.
It's the people who did eventually organize it at the top didn't have the best intentions, probably,
Yeah,
in
and there
some
was no
cases.
organization or top until there
Yeah,
was no, until none developed, until people
yeah,
stepped up. So that whole
yeah,
movement appeared to be almost leaderless in general. So it was
yeah.
really interesting to see which direction would go. But then they came up with their, 18 points priorities, and I'm like, it's kind of a lot of points, guys. Can't we
Yeah, how
just
about
go with
just start with a
three or
couple?
something?
Yeah, start with two or three. Let's keep it simple, guys.
And they couldn't agree on it either.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was
I
interesting.
I think if you leave people, uh, on their own, without leaders and without rules and without laws that protect you and protect others around you and stuff, it just gets messy really fast, and it starts out lovely. Oh, this is so great having no laws. And then, it gets messy, really, really fast,
Yeah, I mean, I
So,
think we only need really one law is you can do whatever you want as long as it doesn't infringe upon what anybody else wants. And if you look at it, all law is almost that rule. It is, well, almost all law, let's say in the US, just to make an easy understanding, is it's the benefit of society or the rights of society versus the right of the individual. That's
the
all law.
challenge is this, though, and the reason that there's
Where is that line?
10 bazillion lawyers out there is it's down to interpretation,
Hmm.
you know? And so we
Absolutely.
pay lawyers to interpret what did that actually mean? Is this guy right or is this guy right? And, you fight for days over the interpretation of the law. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Like I always like when I see those things start because it's like, oh, look, a love fest. And then before
Yeah.
you know it, they're fucking burning buildings down and
That's
killing each
exactly
other
what.
with pitchforks and stuff. I mean, it's like it just never works out. We need bumpers. We the human
Oh,
race, we need bumpers. We need
we
rules.
certainly do. My hope was it was a reevaluation of what those bumpers are.
Yeah.
I mean, their main thing they were asking for was police accountability, stop beating up black people and killing them. And I mean, I'm going to tell you, I think that's a reasonable request.
Yeah, yeah, it certainly is. And again, then it comes down to, interpretation again, because, are more black people getting beat up when they're getting arrested because white cops hate black people, or is it because more black people are committing crime and therefore the numbers are skewed that direction?
I would have to say that
And I think it's
whole.
a combination of all of it. I
I
think it's
mean,
a
I
bit of
think as far as this
everything.
whole movement went, there was. I mean, the actual catalyst was on video of them doing exactly that.
Yeah,
That was not
yeah,
open to interpretation, and it was a
yeah.
whole chain of them. And finally, one broke. Finally, one broke the camel's back, and that's why that occurred. It was
Yeah,
a really reasonable request, and I
yeah.
don't think they
I
actually
agree with you.
achieved much out of it.
Yeah, no, I can basically agree with you. And it's just I've never I'm Canadian. We like laws. We it's so funny when I go up to my house in Canada, nobody goes like 2 kilometers over the speed limit except me, and they're like, there's that lunatic in the BMW with Florida plates on it, massive maniac lunatic nut job. And but I like if it says 50, they mean 60. They don't
Oh,
really
they,
mean
they mean
50.
80. And now I'm a. Do I want to admit this? Look, we don't have traffic enforcement in Seattle. I've got fast cars, and all I do is I just hit the pedal to the floor on the highway when I'm going to work. It's a 2 mile drive. I mean, I usually don't break 100 or 120.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
But that is exactly the thing without enforcement, and I think that's it's a cultural thing in just about anywhere. It starts when we're
Yeah.
babies, when we're testing boundaries. Hey,
Yeah.
we got no boundaries right now in this
Yeah.
country, and Canadians were brought up better, perhaps, or at least a little bit more understanding that you're a member of society rather than the American dream. We're an individual. We're seeking it for ourselves. So it's a
Well,
very
I've always
cultural
thought that.
difference.
I've always thought that. I've always thought, like, ever since I came here, I've been here over 30 years now, and I still feel like we have too many rights. We just have way too many rights here, and I go back to Canada and it's like, what do you mean I can't have 4 handguns on my belt or whatever, Like, why? Why? I have my rights, how dare you? But and I'm not anti-gun, I'm not pro-gun, I'm not any of those things. I'm so much in the middle of all of this stuff. Like it just I'm not a political guy really at the end of the day. I'm just not a
I'm
political
choosing
guy.
that path right now myself.
Yeah, I'm not a political guy. I'm a businessman, so generally I'll vote one direction over the other direction just because it's a little more pro-business or whatever. But none of the other stuff, like all the issues that become central in every election, okay, they're important, but I'm not going to pick a president based on that. you know?
So I've gone and lobbied in the Capitol years ago for what's called the Safe Banking Act, which is basically allowing a bit more banking for cannabis, a bit of change of the laws, and it was clear that nothing gets done there now. So that gets you a little bit apathetic, a little bit frustrated with politics in general. So in Washington State, one of my attorneys here at my firm is the second ranking Democrat in the House. So every year I go and spend a day with him, go to private lobbying meetings, go to stakeholders, laws get written, bills get written, laws get voted on, bills get voted on. And I was so blown away at how effective it was, at least at a local level, of actually seeing change and horse trading and laws getting passed and signed into
Wow.
these bills getting signed and passed into law, and the movement of laws between different stakeholders. For instance, there was one private meeting I was in where it was the police department and stakeholders from a number of different police departments, and then there was some organization that was obviously antithetical or polar opposite of them, and they were arguing over a new writing of a law. And it was really interesting to see the politicians take both sides and say, okay, how have we tried this? What do you guys think about this? And really working through it and passing it into laws. I was just filled with, again, hope that maybe shit does work sometime.
Yeah, that's shocking to me because I don't get that feeling, And I
No.
had Joe on the podcast a couple months ago, and man, was he bitter about. I can't remember, but it was something related to nothing gets done in the government.
Money in politics. There ain't a whole
Yeah,
lot of money in politics in Washington,
yeah.
except for certain things like Costco threw a ton of money into the liquor industry here, and they had to do multiple initiatives, so they were deep in to get
Who
things
did?
done. So we used to have public liquor stores, kind of like Pennsylvania still probably has, and so we have 334 liquor stores in the state of Washington. They're all government run. So
Oh, wow.
Costco fought and fought and fought so they could sell liquor in Costco's, and eventually they won. But the first set of bills, the first initiative didn't pass, so they rewrote it, and now we have the highest liquor taxes in the country, and you have to be 10,000 square feet or more unless you're one of the legacy stores
Oh,
now in
wow.
order to sell liquor. There's a bunch of other exceptions, but it just basically put the power in grocery stores' hands. It
Yeah,
was
grocery
really
stores
weird.
and Costco. Yeah, yeah.
Corporate direction, and wasn't the best for the people necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah, Canada's the same. I don't know what the laws are in Canada right now, but like growing up, you had to go to the ALCB store, Alberta Liquor Control Board store. And that's where you bought beer. That's where you bought alcohol. You couldn't buy it anywhere else. But now I know there's private liquor stores up there, but I don't know how the law works. So I'm not sure.
I mean, it
No
kind
idea.
of tries to work. We used to drive from Cleveland up over to through Detroit to Windsor to go drinking at 19.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, everybody did. I remember when I first moved to the US, I lived in Chicago for a little while with my then wife. And people used to always tell me, "Oh yeah, I've been to Canada." And I said, "Let me guess. You went through the tunnel or whatever over to Windsor to watch strippers and drink beer." And that
Wait, you
was
guys have
usually the
something
case.
else in Canada? Hockey players.
Hockey players. Yeah, we got hockey. We got hockey in Canada. Man, last night there was a game on here, Florida versus New Jersey. The craziest fight I have ever seen in a hockey game. Like just bang, 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 just beating the
Great. It
hell
seems
out
like
of
they're
each
not
other.
fighting anymore.
Oh my God, these two, it's literally one of the craziest fights I've seen in years. It was just, it went for like probably a minute straight of just nonstop punching. It was a boxing match. It was crazy. Wild
Great.
fight.
We have the
Wild
Seattle
fight.
Kraken over here that
Yeah.
just started a couple years ago, and
Yeah.
everybody has season tickets, and everybody's giving away tickets, and there's never any fights. Like, what the hell happened to hockey? The first time I watched hockey, I was doing the lighting rig. I was doing a lighting install, and I just set up the console, and I ran a number of games. And I didn't really watch hockey. I didn't grow up in Canada,
Yeah.
and they threw a guy through the glass onto people's laps. I'm like, I got him.
That's
I love
hilarious.
this game. What the hell was that?
That is so funny. That's so funny. When I first moved here, I worked for Martin Lighting's distributor, Trackman at the time, and it was owned by a French guy named Gerard Cohen. And so when we got a hockey team down here, it was like a year after I moved here, and we get this hockey team, the Florida Panthers, and he bought season tickets, 4 tickets, and I was the token hockey guy, so he'd bring me to all the games with him and his two sons. And Marcel, what is happening? Marcel, what is happening? Marcel. So I constantly had to explain the rules to the three of them. And then a fight broke out. And he's looking at me and he's like, Marcel, what are they doing? Why is the guy letting them fight? What is this? This is barbaric. It's crazy. And within 3 or 4 games after that, they were like, kill him, kick his ass, kill him. They were like cheering for the fights, right? It was hilarious.
It is the best part of hockey. It's like NASCAR. The
Wow.
best part is the crashes. What else is there? You're going around in a circle.
I kind of love hockey, so I tolerate fighting to put up with the rest of the game. But I know a lot of people do like the hockey fights, and I don't generally look away when there is one. It's pretty fun, but it is a bit barbaric. Like when you think about it, it's 2024, and we've still got a sport that allows fist fights in it, right? It's pretty funny.
It's what football is. Football is a wage of war at the line of scrimmage, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a modern day warfare.
But the more they lighten it up, the more boring the games get. Like it's,
Yeah.
the fact that quarterbacks can play till they're 50 now because you can't touch them is crazy, except Tua. Tua gets a freaking concussion every week, but other than Tua, quarterbacks can play until they can't walk anymore, basically, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a good and bad side of that. But I appreciate it, I guess, so we don't have head injuries. But I was, I think on my 21st birthday, I was at this bar called the Hick in freaking Cornfield, Ohio, the Hickory, and I ran into this football Browns player named Bubba, who's gotten famous since for selling, I don't know, boneless ribs or something like that. But he
Oh,
had a
right.
catering
Yeah, I
company
remember
then,
him.
and he's like, "This game's gotten soft." I guess he must have been a linebacker. I'm guessing based on the story. He's
Yeah.
like, "This game's gotten soft." Usually, what you do is you look at him, you take your finger and you stick it right in his eye across the line of scrimmage. And if he's still looking, you take your other finger and stick it in his other eye.
Oh my God. Yeah, I saw a thing about rugby once that they did shit like that, like where they would just, you know, do things to you in that scrum just to make you feel the worst possible pain you could possibly feel. And I'm like, what kind of sport is that? It sounds like one I need to watch. Meanwhile, I'm a big UFC fan, right? So
Hey, there's a fight coming up, right?
Tyson, yeah, on
Uh,
Friday.
is it Friday? Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, Mike Tyson against that annoying dude, right?
yeah, Jake Paul.
Jake
Yeah.
Paul.
And I'm on the fence with that because I was a huge Mike Tyson fan. I think he's going to kill him. And I mean, it's so weird to say that because the guy's 58 years old or whatever, but I've watched his training videos. He's a machine still, man. And it's still Mike Tyson in there somewhere, you know?
Strongest punch in the history of the sport, no doubt. I don't even know if Muhammad Ali would have beat him in his prime.
Yeah, but how does he take a punch? Like that's the thing. He's 58. It's got to hurt to get hit now. So like if Jake can get at him, and Jake's taller and longer than him, so if Jake can hit him, that might cause some real problems for Tyson. But if Jake can't get to him, Tyson is gonna this guy's gonna regret talking smack to the toughest guy ever in boxing.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Looks like I'm
Yeah.
watching the fight. It's Friday, you said?
Yeah, Friday night on Netflix. Yeah,
On
which is
Netflix. Now I got to
wild.
get
Like,
a streaming platform. I don't know here.
you don't have Netflix?
No, I would have Netflix.
Because everyone has Netflix now.
Not everyone, apparently. I don't know. This whole thing, Netflix was great once upon a time. This has been
Yeah, it's
needed
pretty
to
garbage.
forever, but there's like 50 streaming networks. I give
Yeah,
up.
yeah, I
So,
know.
whatever.
I know.
I mean, I do pay for that YouTube, whatever, so I don't have ads because it's every video.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so they got my money out of that, and
yeah.
Spotify got a little bit of money. But yeah,
Well,
no.
you can call me and I'll give you my password and you can become
Could
part
you
of
just
my
tell it to me now?
family. Become part of my family on Friday night. Yeah, let me just put it up on the screen here for you. Yeah. So back.
I
Go on.
have a question.
Sure.
What the hell is going on with the entertainment industry these days? Why is everybody crying? What the fuck happened to the entire industry? Are we just going to keep shrinking in size here and not getting as many gigs? Festivals are going are just disappearing. Concerts, I mean, is Ticketmaster killing everything? What the hell's going on here?
So, um, yes, a lot of that stuff. So, I mean, it's a weird moment right now because I think we are suffering this year. I think was a bit of a hangover from the last 2 years. The last 2 years, like I kept saying to people that even idiots I know in our industry were buying new sports cars and new boats and new buildings and new houses and stuff. And yet my business was pretty flat, and I consider myself a pretty smart guy, but I'm looking around and everybody around me is just going gangbusters, right? Like they're doing more shows than they should be doing, and people are just throwing money at them. And so it was pretty easy for a little while there. And then I think it kind of went back to a version of normal. And what we had was probably a few too many companies,
Hmm.
maybe a few too many brands who all succeeded very well for a couple of years there. And we're going to start seeing some of the manufacturers having trouble again, like they did pre COVID and during COVID. And so there's a bit of that. Um, I'm seeing something even worse though. For the past couple of months, I'm seeing companies closing their doors. I'm starting to see big layoffs happening in our industry again. Um, a lot of companies losing money, like basically doing the same number of shows, but now they can't even make a profit. They can't even break even. And so I think we need to go back to some version of normalcy, and hopefully that's what next year brings. Like, I don't know. What do you think?
I think normalcy's dead. I think what happened, I'll give you a little anecdote here. I used to go to the nightclubs 3, 4, 5 times a week for
Yeah.
20 years. And one day I woke up, I was like, huh, wait a second. I don't even fucking like nightclubs. What am I doing? But it was a cool thing to do. And I think everybody goes out, you go and see a show, you take in a movie, you do this entertainment thing, and COVID hit, and people had to sit at home. And I think once COVID ended, there was a huge burst back to say, okay, I can go out again and go to festivals, go to shows, what have you. And then they're like, then you know what? I was perfectly fine sitting on my ass at home with my friends. So I think it's kind of like I'm downtown here and commercial real estate's broken and it's never coming back. I'm getting offices at a quarter. We're just about to get new offices 4 times the size of our current ones at probably the same price as what I'm paying in rent now.
Wow.
And it's just broken. They're trying
Yeah.
to convert buildings into residential because nobody has to be downtown. You work from home. Hey, I'm getting the same work done. I'm getting more work done. I'm working less. I'm in my
Yeah.
pajamas.
Yeah.
I'm never going back. I
Well,
get
that
that.
is actually one change that I think has been a really positive change. My company was totally remote before COVID, long before, years before COVID. But I like that companies are going, hey, we're actually a little more efficient when our staff are remote and working from home and whatever. And you're not spending all that money for real estate that nobody really wants to be in anyways. And people aren't on the roads all day and the streets aren't as full and all of that kind of stuff. So that's a good thing. But as far as the not going to clubs or not going to shows anymore, So I think one of the things that happened when we came out of COVID, the appetite was so big that you had theater bands that were now playing in arenas, you had arena bands that were
Mm.
now playing in stadiums, you had club bands that were in theaters. Everybody sort of moved up a level or two, right? And the appetite was so big that they were all selling. And so then all of a sudden this year, especially the beginning of this year, we started seeing some wrinkles in that model where some bands were either moving back to theaters from arenas or back to arenas from stadiums or whatever because they weren't selling out anymore. And so that part of that was greed at the very top level, some of the companies you mentioned and others. And some of it, I think, was necessity because there were no arenas. And so they had to go to stadiums because stadiums were sitting still, and let's use those instead. And so where's it all going? Well, if you listen to Live Nation, they will tell you that we're still just scratching the surface. And he actually, Rapino wrote a pretty or did a pretty cool article about all of this when he was asked, "Do you think there's still growth in ticket sales?" And he said, "Here's the thing: these artists have become so big on social media that." Starting with COVID, especially, they've gotten so big on social media. Some of these artists, many of these artists have 10 million followers. All we have to do is sell tickets to 5% of them. And
Sure.
so if you look at it that way, the audience has gotten so much bigger
Mm.
that, there's not going to be a shortage of need for shows and for companies to provide for those shows and stuff. So I just think that we sold a lot of lights and a lot of sound equipment and a lot of video equipment in 21 and 22. I think it's kind of full now. Like everybody's got enough gear for the most part. Like everyone says, "Oh, I've got a shortage of gear." Well, those are companies that are accustomed to cross renting or whatever. But companies who are doing their own shows, for the most part, have enough gear right now, and so I think that that's going to cause a problem at the top on the manufacturing end of things. I think it's going to allow some of those companies, because remember, they had to buy all this gear in 21 and 22. And so they're stuck with all those payments, lease payments. A lot of them, are addicted to leasing. And so they've got all these lease payments on this gear. And when you have a slow month, that's painful and all that stuff. I think for a while, they're going to actually be able to sort of mellow out a bit and not have to buy gear at the level that they did for a couple of years. Hopefully that allows more people to be profitable. And I think the companies that have hurt the worst are the small to mid-size ones that are, call it, 3 to $20 million. Those are the companies I think that are having the most trouble right now. I think the big ones are still doing okay, even though one of the biggest ones told me a couple weeks ago that this was the worst year they've had in a while, other than COVID. And so yeah, it just feels like people are doing more work for less money right now, is what it really comes down to.
I guess you could tell them there's always the wedding industry.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know if any of this is coming back full bore, in which it's just a changed society.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, because I spent some time with a friend of mine who's an account exec for a large lighting firm, and he said his pipeline for the next 18 months is the biggest he's ever had. So,
Oh, it's
unless
great though.
everybody cancels all at once, or unless we go to war against China or something terrible, knock on my wooden head, hopefully that doesn't happen. But, um, you know, a lot of it depends on that stuff, and we had to get past this election. I think in our industry, I've always downplayed how important an election is, or whether an election has an impact on business. This one did, and you can't deny it. It happened. There was a huge impact on our business. And I think now that the election's over, regardless of who was going to win it, it needed to be over so that we can just kind of get back to work again. So we're going to see some of that. I think we'll see a resurgence a bit.
Yeah. Well, I guess it remains to be seen. I think not to delve too much into any type of politics, but business likes predictability, and I think we're about to have a lot of unpredictability, or at least unforeseeability, which means how do we plan for it? For instance, I was about to rent a place that's 5 times the size of mine, penthouse, 4,000 square feet of outdoor deck overlooking the Puget Sound, which is our largest body of water here. And I'm like, I don't know what the next several years are going to handle economically. I can't prepare for that. I'm about to sign $2 million on lease payments for the next 10 years. I don't think so, which would
Yeah.
have been 5 million 4 years ago. So that's
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Um, so we've definitely downsized and gone into more of a stable route and said, okay, we're experiencing fast growth. Let's not overshoot it till we see it, and we'll figure
Yeah.
it out as we come, and we'll just start
Yeah.
knocking holes through walls
Yeah.
and small offices.
I understand why you say those things, but I tend to completely disagree with you. I think that we're going to see, less clamps on our throat to not be able to do business. We're
But
going to see.
you say that. However, the issue is this is all guesswork. We have no freaking proof on exactly what's about to happen and how that's
It
going to affect
happened
each
4 years
aspect of
ago. It
business.
happened 4 years ago. It
I mean,
happened.
COVID
It
happened
happened.
4 years ago. How was that
No,
for
no,
the
but before
industry?
that, before that, before
So,
for the first 3 years, for the
um,
first 3 years, it got much easier to do business. Taxes went down,
I mean,
costs
lots of
went
government
down,
handouts.
profits went up, and so yeah, I mean, obviously we're on different sides of the fence, so we're going to have different views of
Mm.
this. I don't completely disagree with your views. Um, I just have a positive feeling. So I'm cup is half full, your cup is half empty, and I think we'll meet somewhere in the middle with a beer.
Yeah, the
Fuck the
policies
cups.
refill. So yeah, I mean, I like predictability in business.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to what's being done at the federal and state level, that affects me a bit more because now I've got to adjust for laws,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, or
That's
what
true.
courts are going to do all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
How's that going to affect all of our cases going on?
Yeah. No, that I can completely understand that. I just think for our business, I think we're going to have a pretty good climate as long as we don't get into conflicts. I think if we get into conflicts, that's going to be problematic because our economy is already, teetering on death. And I'd like to see us paying back some of our debt as opposed to, adding to it. I believe in business. I believe in businesses. I believe in business owners. I believe in entrepreneurs like you and me. And because you're a rare entrepreneurial lawyer, I know all entrepreneurs think they're lawyers, but you actually are, or think they're. I should say I know all lawyers think they're entrepreneurs, but you actually are one. And I believe in us. I believe in the fact that we're gonna do some great things today for the next 4 years, for the next 40 years. I probably won't because I'll be gone. But yeah, so
To the
we'll
big
see.
Canada in the sky.
Yeah, to the
Uh,
big Canada in the sky. Exactly.
It's funny. Lawyers aren't entrepreneurs because the type of person that goes to law school does it as a safe job. They
I
are
know.
risk adverse.
Yeah.
So it's opposite. I went to law school because somebody dared me to apply, and I applied to one law school on a dare. They gave me a scholarship, and I'm like, okay, cool. Wait, what do lawyers do?
Yeah, right. That's hilarious.
So very different path.
Uh, yeah, that's hilarious. Well, but I mean, you're also Indian, so you got to be a doctor or a lawyer
I
or an
mean, well, the
accountant.
lawyer
I
was
mean,
a
you got to do one of
disappointment to
those
my
things.
parents.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. You're supposed to be in the medicine world, right?
Absolutely.
Although, nowadays, like, I would say there's a huge number of Indian entrepreneurs. Like,
Mm.
you guys are some of the smartest people on earth, and I do business with lots of Indians on the tech side of things because they're just friggin' smart people and really hungry and really on it. There's an AI guy that I follow. He is part of something called Growth School, and I forget his name. It's very Indian. He's in India,
It's very Indian.
but it's not like Gupta or something. It's something much longer and more difficult to remember. And but one of the smartest guys on AI that I know, and just a really really super bright guy. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think some of that is that there's 1.5 billion people there, so some of the best is the ones that get out of
yeah,
there. Education's very prominent and pushed with Indians, as well as um, first or second generation Indians growing here. have that safety net that their parents didn't have, so they're able to go a bit further with entrepreneurship and risk. Where the
That makes
people that
sense.
moved
Yeah.
from India that did it, let's say a generation ago, like my parents, they've got no safety net. There's nothing. If they
Yeah.
only have 200 bucks to their name and they lose it, they're out on the street. And a country that doesn't really accept them, where my dad came to Oklahoma in the 60s, it's a
Oh,
different thing.
yeah.
Um, it caused you to be risk adverse, but you instill business into your children and go be a doctor or whatever. It gives them a lot more risk tolerance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's wild. Yeah. So, what didn't we cover? I mean, we've covered a lot.
I mean, I could talk your ear off about what have you. You just have
Well,
to
no, I
choose a
mean,
subject.
on our industry. So, again, we're not in a very litigious industry, but where are you seeing problems in our industry or potential problems coming besides AI, impacting everyone's businesses and killing all our jobs or whatever? But
I mean,
is there
China
anything?
gear is definitely creating major issues for the more well-established brands, but it's
Yeah.
also giving access to less expensive products to the end user or the
Yeah.
businesses. So it's a really tough call there, right? I
Yeah.
mean, nothing's like a clay packy optic, but nothing's the cost of it either. So,
Yeah.
so that's a tough situation. I really think it's the entertainment industry. The decrease of shows, I think, is not coming back very easily.
Yeah.
And you say everybody's got the gear. I mean, unless they keep innovating, companies like Martin and Claypaky aren't going to be selling any new gear.
Yeah. No, it's true.
I
Well, and
do.
as the what you called, I think, China lighting problem becomes bigger, and like you see these brands on Facebook Marketplace, or you see them on Amazon or whatever. I don't even remember the names of the brands, but there's some pretty popular ones that sell direct, and they're very low cost. And Joe's always on Facebook talking about them and stuff. But the problem with a lot of those brands, especially the ones that plagiarize other products, copy other products, uh, they take away the incentive to innovate, and it costs a lot of money to come up with really cool new technology and to test it and to perfect it and then, do all the tooling and then kick out a new product. You're talking potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then if you kick it out the door and 3 months later, there's one for 75% less money being sold direct on Amazon or whatever, where's the incentive? You got to be able to collect your money back.
There isn't. I do legal work for LFI, Laser
Yeah.
Fantasy International,
Yeah.
and they have a $200,000 RGB with the best optics I've ever seen, the size of a ream of paper, airtight, just the most amazing stuff. And I can get the same power output, quote quote, power output from China. Theirs is 200 grand. For one of these, the really cool stuff. I can get one from China for 250 bucks with the
Oh
same
my God.
bloated, quote unquote, power output. It's
Wow.
just batshit. I
I mean,
don't
it
know.
might burn your building down or whatever, but
Oh,
it's
and if
still,
you actually shoot it into black box, it's actually shooting out many, many watts over that, all over the place in the
oh boy.
infrared spectrum or the UV
Yeah.
spectrum. Dangerous as shit.
Yeah.
Um, but it does put that into the hands of, now I'm a wedding DJ and my $250 laser is at 20 watts or
Yeah.
what have
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I know one of the big ones too, the MA console, like
I've
there's
seen those China
counterfeit
MAs
consoles
even using the software, right? The
for like
Able
a
Light's
couple
got hit hard
grand.
with that shit.
Yeah.
Um,
And you can tell the difference, but it looks close enough. When you're talking about the difference between a $70,000 console and something that's $2,000 or $3,000, and it does sort of the same thing,
I mean,
that's
and MA is
challenging.
about stability as well as function.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
But I mean, Campsys, I think, is breaking the market anyways. They've gone since they got bought by, was it Trave that bought them?
Yeah.
They've dropped the prices of competent consoles so far, and I like it. I was always a Campsys guy, even when it
Yeah.
was still rough around the edges. I think it's a great, really affordable console and platform to work
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. But the problem is now it's being sold on Amazon and Sweetwater and, all of those types of places. Not that that's bad. It's just, I think if you're a professional lighting company, you're looking at that and going, I don't know that I want to put that on the bid to this church that I'm doing. If they can go on Amazon and buy it for 40% less or whatever,
Oh,
that
if
could
you're
be
slinging it, if
problematic.
you're selling it. Yeah, so what I did is I was a lighting dealer at one point and I just set the footprint in Oregon where there's no sales tax, so I could undercut everyone else.
Oh
Laws are a
boy.
little bit different now though.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's not quite so easy now. Well, and now you
No.
have the whatever they call it, the Wayfair law, which I have to deal with on a daily basis with a marketplace that I have. So, yeah, it's a wacky world out there. But yeah, counterfeit product has been going on. Like I started working for Martin Lighting in 1991,
That
and
RoboScan era.
not long after, RoboScan was being copied in China,
Oh, wow.
and they called it the Martin RoboScan, but it said made in China somewhere. And like they were copying the track spot. And it was funny because I remember I was at High End for a while. Richard Bellevue came into a meeting with a Chinese track spot, opened it up, and it said manufactured in Austin, Texas, China.
I did not know there was generic track spots going out. That might be
Oh,
one of my
hell
favorite lights
yeah.
ever made.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the Mac
Yeah, the track
101s
spot
I
was
think are
killer.
great too because you can just toss a ton of them into your back seat and you're good to go.
Or the Mac 1 now. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's really cool.
I think I have. It's a little bit heavier though, but a better beam profile. Is that right?
I think it's lighter and it's
Oh,
tiny as hell. It weighs like 10 pounds. Uh, they're like 1,500 bucks or something.
oh,
And
really?
they sell these 4 bars for them. So you can put like a bar
Uh,
of 4 and the whole thing goes into the case and there's one connector and stuff.
oh,
Really cool packaging. And it looks like a VL5. It's a little wash light and it
okay.
kind of looks like a VL5.
Well, I mean, the
Really nice.
101s were doing decent beam effects before we really had beam lights.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go. I always love the aerial effect. I've been raving about it since HES, since High End had
Yeah.
the moving pin spot. Pin scan is what they called it. I gathered a bunch of those things. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's like 30-watt white light pin spots on a
Yeah.
little box that did pan and
I think
tilt.
Clay
And
Packy had those or something,
no,
didn't
oh,
he?
maybe it was Clay
Yeah,
Packy.
I
All
think it was
right.
Clay Packy. High End had like some other things. Like they had the emulator, which was
The
cool as hell
emulators
when
were
it came out.
great back then when lasers were
Yeah, you
really
just couldn't see them.
expensive.
Yeah.
I think somebody created a new source for those since it's
Yeah.
those three atmosphere pressure $400 bulbs with the short
Yeah.
arc.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but
I
they
think
don't
you're right.
punch. 10 years ago we were playing with them, 20 years ago, and they just didn't have to punch
But now
anymore.
you
But
can get good lasers for so cheap. So I guess
audience scanning.
you're supposed to have a whatchamacallit though, what do you call it? The friggin' thing that you have to have to operate lasers over like one
Variants.
megawatt or whatever. A variance, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Couldn't
FDA.
remember the word.
It's pretty funny. It's an FDA variance, and then an FA if you're outside.
Yeah.
The
Which
um,
is a bummer because a lot of those laser fixtures that are out now, like the Ayrton has the Cobra and Claypaky has the Stelos, the light moving lights, but with a laser light source in it.
mm,
Um,
does that qualify?
Ayrton has one now, a really tiny little one called a Kyalami, I think it's called. And it's like I think it's 100-watt laser.
Oh
And it's
shit.
just, it's freaking crazy, beautiful, tiny as hell, beams galore, just a killer light.
Yeah, my
Uh,
issue is I don't care if you got an audience getting a pangolin or it's all safe. I still don't want a laser pointed anywhere near my eye. I just don't
yeah,
care.
yeah.
I'm still pretty paranoid about that whole concept.
Are you? Yeah. See, I'm not because to me, you know, like if you've ever looked at a Sharpie, you know, that thing is bright as hell. It'll burn your friggin' retina out, yet
Good
it's
point.
totally legal. It's totally legal and acceptable, but you can't look at a laser fixture that we've all done. So yeah.
I mean,
Anyways.
sure. I mean, I'm not saying paranoias are reasonable.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, you're not supposed to look at them, but look at me, I'm okay. Says he
I
with the
see you
glasses
have
on.
glasses on, and
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, Neil, I appreciate you, man. It's been fun talking to you. I never know what I'm going to talk about when I talk with you, and it just kind of goes pshoo, off into the forest somewhere. Uh,
absolutely.
we've been through weed and mushrooms and politics and
Uh,
baby making and all kinds of things. So
well,
it's
if
always
you ever
fun.
need to reach me, assholelawyer.com. Those are me.
Perfect.
Assholeattorney.com too. I happen to own those.
Do you really?
I do. Yeah, check it out.
You know what's funny? A long, long time ago in the internet world, someone told me buy fuck whatever your name is.com and buy it because someone will buy it if you ever get big and famous. So I think I still own fuckmarcelfairbairn.com and or
I'm
Marcel's
getting
an asshole.com or whatever.
fuckmarcel.net next.
Exactly. .io, .ai. All right, my friend. Well, good seeing you, and have fun on all those vacations you're taking this year.
Absolutely.
Sounds
I'll look you
amazing.
up
I'm
in
jealous.
Florida. Let me know if you're in Seattle.
Please
I
do.
got a boat out here and a guest car
Cool.
and all of that.
Fun. A guest car. I'm coming.
Oh, yeah,
I'll be
me
there
and my
soon.
girl are huge car nuts. We got three Porsche 911s, a GT3, and
You
that's a
don't have a
daily.
GT3 RS though, do you? Because I'll be
No,
really
she
jealous
has the
if you do.
GT3.
Yeah.
She's got
Yeah.
two 911s. I have one.
Yeah. But the GT3 RS is just so crazy. I have a BMW and the Porsche dealer's next door and he's a friend of mine and I got my car serviced last week and they had this beautiful yellow GT3
It's
RS in the showroom and it's friggin'
a pricey car for just a little bit extra of a
well, it's like
GT3.
250 grand over sticker too.
Oh, yeah. So
So
you're
it's
at
like
what, like
500 and
550?
550 or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And people are buying them as fast as they come in. They only get used ones. Like this was a used one and it's still selling for like one something over sticker.
I mean,
It's
I
crazy.
daily drive all my cars. I beat them
Yeah.
up. I'm in Seattle with hills. I'm scraping the front bumper
Yeah.
every
Good for
day.
you.
Whatever.
Drive it like it's supposed to be driven.
Absolutely.
It's a car at the end of the day, right? That's how I've always been too. Like I have friends who park at the other end of the parking lot and take up two spots and park sideways and all that stuff. Like to me, that's just an invitation to get your door keyed or something. Like I just park it like closest to the front I can get. I don't care. It's just a car.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, Neil. Thanks, buddy.
All right. Thanks,
We'll
Marcel.
we'll talk soon.